Miss Beckworth spoke into stunned silence, holding her register aloft. So, Anthony Andrews, you come and sit at this desk at the front with Judith Ashwell beside you, and then... But Judith's the girl, miss. Anthony protested in horror. Cleverly observed, Mr. Andrews, said Miss Beckworth. And kindly note, I call you Mr. Andrews, not plain Mr. I would prefer you to call me Miss Beckworth, not Miss. But boys and girls never sit together. Sit next to each other, miss, said Anthony. He's as thick as 2 short planks. 22. But when Miss Beckworth's forehead wrinkled, he rewound her little speech inside his empty head and took heed. Miss Beckworth, miss, I don't want to sit next to Judith. Well, you needn't think I want to sit next to you, said Judith. Oh, Miss Beckworth, that's not fair. Miss Beckworth didn't care. I said things would be different in my class. I didn't say they would be fair, she said. Now get yourselves sorted out and stop fussing like a lot of silly babies. Who's next on the register? Laura Bernard. Right. Sit at the desk behind Anthony and Judith, and then... I hovered, signalling wild regret with my eyebrows to Angela, who'd got up half an hour early for nothing. Angela's surname is Robinson, so obviously we wouldn't be sitting together. But Lisa is Lisa Field, right after me on the register, so it looked as if we were okay after all. It wasn't really fair on poor Angela if I sat next to Lisa 2 years running, but it couldn't be helped. But it didn't work out like that. James Edwards, you sit at the desk at the back, on the left with Miss Beckworth, with, Charlotte Enright's beside you. Jamie Edwards, the most revolting, stuck-up, boring boy in the whole class, the whole year, the whole school, the whole town, county, country, world, universe. I'd sooner squat in the stationery cupboard than sit next to him. I thought quickly, my brain going whiz, flash, bang. Aha! Sudden inspiration. I'm afraid I can't see very well, Miss Beckworth, I said, squinting up my eyes as if I badly needed glasses. If I sit at the back, I won't be able to see the board. Sometimes I still have problems even at the front. So if Lisa Field can come sit next to me again, then I'm used to her telling me stuff in case I can't read it for myself. Isn't that right, Lisa? This was all news to Lisa, but she nodded convincingly. Yes, Miss Beckworth. I always have to help Charlie, said Lisa. But Miss Beckworth wasn't fooled. I'm not convinced you're short-sighted, Charlotte. Quick-witted, certainly, but until you bring me a note from your mother and another from your optician, I'd like you to sit at the back beside James. That was it. I was doomed. There was no way out. I had to sit next to Jamie Edwards. He moved his chair right up against the wall and shuddered elaborately as I flopped down furiously beside him. Charlie Cakehole, yuck, he said, but under his breath because he knew Miss Beckworth was watching. Jamie Edwards is the smarmiest little swat and always wants the teachers to have him as their pet. Which he is anyway, because he's such an infuriating clever clogs, always coming top, top, top. Well, who on earth wants to be top of the class? Why can't you try harder at school, Charlie? Joe always says. You're bright. If only you stop messing around and work hard, you could do really well. You could come top if you really tried. I asked Jo why she always nagged so about my boring old education. Maybe you're not so bright as I thought you were, Jo said. Can't you work it out for yourself? That made me feel bad. But it's hopeless. Maybe I could do better. I'm not bottom of the class, mind you. Just a nice comfy middle. But I suppose if I worked like stink, then I could do better. I can generally beat Lisa and Angela if I want. Maybe I could come top out of the girls. But I could never beat Jamie Edwards, as I'd far sooner be bottom than second to Smarty Pants. So I slid down my seat and sulked for the morning. It was hot, but Jamie kept me well fanned, waving his hand frantically all the time because he kept wanting Miss Beckworth to pick him. Pathetic. I wouldn't put my hand up even when I knew the answers, even in English, which is my best subject. I've always got ticks and stars and very goods all over the place for my stories. Miss Beckworth started a poetry lesson, and it was actually quite interesting. And then she read this poem by some dippy American lady, and you had to guess what it was about, like a riddle. And no one knew. Jamie guessed it might be about a river, and Miss Beckworth had said it was a very good guess, but it was wrong. Ha! I knew what it was. Easy peasy simple pimple. It was a train, and I sat there with this pleased feeling throbbing through me. Though I acted all cool and bored, slumped in my seat, arms folded, waiting until she was just about to give up, and then I was going to put my hand up after all, and maybe yawn a bit or fiddle with my hair, and then I was going to go, "It's a train," like it must be obvious to everyone. One up to me, and Yahoo sucks to Jamie. "Think really hard," said Miss Beckworth. "Can't anyone guess?" And she looked straight at me, almost as if she could see inside my head and look at the train going puff, puff, puff round my brain. I still waited. I waited just a fraction too long, because she stopped looking at me. And just as I was unfolding my arms ready to put my hand up, she said, "It's a train." And everyone else said, "Oh, a train, of course, I get it." And Anthony and those of his ilk scratched their heads and said, "You what? And why is it a train? And I hate this soppy poem stuff." I drummed my fingers on the desk in irritation and muttered, "I knew it was a train." Jamie looked at me with those snooty eyebrows of his disappearing right up under his floppy fringe. "Oh, sure," he said sarcastically. Well, I wouldn't have believed me either, but I did know, so I felt even less like joining in now, and I drew trains all over the back of my new school jotter, large, looming trains about to mash and mangle small, snobby boys tied to the rail tracks. Then we had to write our own poem about trains. I can usually write poems quite quickly, so I did a silly one first on a piece of paper torn out of my jotter. Puff, 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 can't stand this stuff. All about trains, it gives me pains. Prize pains to me is Jamie E.